have over the next day, certainly over the past day. I hail from the beautiful country of South Africa. I run a venture capital firm, and I spend my life and my time talking to the innovators and entrepreneurs that are building the future of the place we call home. Now, over the past day or so, yesterday you would have heard from the incredible Vusi, who is, in my mind, one of the foremost thinkers about what are the macroeconomics that form the investment case for putting your capital in the continent. Today, you heard stories from innovators like Fred and several others who've spoken about the work they're doing on the ground. You not only heard that, but you've also heard from His Excellency, who joined us from Zimbabwe to talk about what is the investment case for their beautiful country too. So just to recap, we've spent time talking about what are the investment cases. That's not what it is I'd like to talk to you about today. Today, I want to talk to you about one simple thing. What are the reasons to believe? Why are we here? Why should we do this? What does the future look like? And who is building that future? In his 1958 magnum opus, Things Fall Apart, the famed Nigerian author, often referred to as the father of African literature, Chinua Achebe, writes the following. He says, "Until lions have their own historians, the story of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunter." For many years, I think, we've mistaken this quote to talk about, or to understand it rather, to be a statement about the lions. These are you and I, those of us braving it every single day, braving the elements, putting our capital on the ground. These are the titans of industry, like the incredible Mohamed Duji, who was here yesterday, talking about what they're doing with the Mittal Group in the East African corner. Without question in my mind, one of the foremost industrialists in our continent today. We've understood that to be a quote about the lions, the titans of industries, the political heads, the diplomats, those of us who meet here to talk about what does the future look like and why should we all believe. I don't think that that's what Chinua Achebe had in mind. Because he says, and I'll say it again, until lions have their own historians, the story of the hunt will glorify the hunter. I think the challenge from Chinua Achebe to us, which is the challenge I'd like to put to you today, is this is not a story about the lions, it's a story about the historians, the narrative shapers, those who tell the story about what we will know, what we will remember, and what messages we will share about ourselves. So first, here is the question. What is the narrative about Africa? These 55 independent states that house 1.2 billion people, most of whom are youth who have a view of the future that is very different to our famed past. If you read about the story of our continent, we often talk about the heroes of yesteryear, the incredible revolutionaries like Patrice Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah. We talk about the incredible humanitarians like the man who birthed the freedom that I happen to have been privileged to enjoy, Utata Nelson Mandela. And even if you look at what's happening in the beautiful nation of Namibia today, all of these are the stories and the heroes of yesteryear. I think the question we must ask ourselves is, who are the heroes of tomorrow? How do we find them today? How do we support them today? And how do we make sure that as historians, we write the book of history we want written about our continent? My hypothesis is simple. It's that if we leave here today, and when we do, Africa, I can tell you because I spent my time traveling it, speaking with entrepreneurs and builders in the continent every day, only means three things. And these are the three things I'd like for you to remember. First, it needs enterprise. Enterprise. In the words of Dambisa Moyo, it's trade, not aid. What Africans are asking for is opportunity, not pity. But for us to truly build an environment that fosters enterprise means we have to see each other as equals, understand the opportunities that the environment has, and frame our business opportunities for that particular environment. Enterprise. It also means we have to understand that every single environment is different, that there is a local texture, a musicality, if you will, that there is a certain rhythm and cadence to how that environment works. Travel, for instance, to the beautiful country of Uganda, where you meet the Baganda people, and get into the Bora from the airport and make your way into the hotel. There is a very different experience about how you travel. Travel to the beautiful country of Nigeria, land at Murtala Airport, where you see the big sign that says no standing, no loitering, and no waiting. And right in front of that sign are about 100 people standing, loitering, and waiting. And the point about this is that each of these environments has a different texture, a uniqueness about it, a cadence, a rhythm, a certain flair. In each of these, what is required is opportunity, not pity, trade, not aid, enterprise. Enterprise. The second point I'd like to make is that beyond enterprise, what Africa really needs, if I may be so bold, to imagine myself a spokesperson for over 1.2 billion people, it needs us to have faith and to believe. To recognize that like every other region in the world, it has her own challenges, but that the people of the land are excited about the future. They believe in that future, and they're invested in that future too. When we started our firm close on a decade ago, the words investment, venture, and capital were in almost all of the literature non-existent, and where they were existent, they often were misunderstood. People didn't understand the difference between an SME, industrial business, or different types of financing instruments. We didn't even understand really what is the true definition of a startup. And so the work we had to do was not only the work to build the investment case for why to invest across the continent. As I speak to you, we're in South Africa, Namibia, Kenya, Nigeria, New York, where we raise capital from our New York office. So the work we have to do is not only about understanding and shaping what is this category of investment, but it was also work about helping those who want to help us understand the environment themselves. There's been a lot of learning over that time. For some in this room, I'm old enough to remember a time, or should I say young enough to remember a time, when we were told and convinced that the usurpers of the world of crypto capital, that ICOs would outbound IPOs, and they did too. In the United States, in 2018, there were more capital raised in early stage financing to the alternative currency of cryptos than was in the traditional currency of fiat. Who would have thunk that we would talk about fiat, this instrument we use to trade every day, as an alternative? And that was the case. And just as quickly as that trend emerged, it just as quickly dissipated. All throughout the same, what Africans have been doing is building real businesses for real people that solve real problems. So these heroes of today, who are they? Where do we find them? I think about heroes like Fred. I think about heroes like the young man Michael Lewis, who we financed in our business, who's built an incredible platform called Cerebrum AI. It's an artificial intelligence platform that you can plug into any industrial application that helps firms that are mid-sized scale their operations without the aforementioned marginal cost growth of every production unit. It takes a complex technology like AI and makes it affordable and on a pay-per-use basis. Now, whilst behind the scenes, and I imagine for most of you in this room, not even heard of, he's powering mid-sized businesses across the continent to compete with incumbents all over the world. Opportunity, not pity. And then the third thing, which I think is important for us to remember. And this is what I'd like to argue is the third thing we need to remember going into this beautiful continent that I call home. It is more than what it appears. It really is. It's more than what it appears. It's more than tourism, even though that's a critical part of who we are. It's more than the challenges, even though that's also a part of who we are. It's also a place where people, as I've said earlier, have hopes and dreams about the future. Perhaps in his most famous poem, John Donne argues, he says, "Every man's death affected me because I am involved in mankind. And so, as John Donne says, sent not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." That poem, written just before the Second World War, was a clarion call for all Europeans across the continent and the subcontinent to recognize that what was about to happen was that their humanity would be connected. That for the first time in a long time, what would happen on the east of Europe would affect what happens on the west of Europe. That what happens on the south had an impact on what happens on the north. And today, if there is one thing we've learned from the events of the past 18 months, this lockdown that all of us have suffered, it's that all of us are connected. And so in the words of John Donne, for those of us wondering what this means, it means quite simply, we are that generation. For me personally, as a father of 3 little children, a young African myself, this is a task I take quite personally. When it's all said and done, when the curtain closes and the spotlight is bright no more, when the exhibitions are over and our time on this fragile earth is done, what would be our legacy? How will we have left this place better than we found it? Because, as John Donne says, sent not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Chinua Achebe said again, until lions have their own historians, the story of the hunt will glorify the hunter. And I'm here to say to all of you, until we as historians take this medal, tell the story, own the narrative, the history of this moment would not have been written by us. And so what I hope for every person in this conversation is that beyond the sophistry and sophistication of the event, beyond the sycophant of the presentations, beyond all of that, that it becomes about real connections with real people doing real things. That we can partner with each other, bond with each other, build with each other. That we can understand that this continent of hope certainly has challenges, but behind every single challenge is a human life that has hopes, dreams, and aspirations too. And that we will take the challenge of being the historians of our time. Many years ago, I used to do competitive public speaking. And many years ago, I just won the World Championship in public speaking, and I traveled back home, and we received a letter that the father of our democracy back home, Nelson Mandela, had asked for a meeting with me. So I went to meet him, as you do, and I spent an hour with him. And my mother sent me 3 instructions for that meeting. She said to me, look smart, sound intelligent, don't embarrass me. It's what I tried to do here today. And I decided the only way to do this was if I said nothing during the whole meeting, if I asked really good questions. And towards the end of that meeting, I had one final question for Udada left, and I asked him the question which I will ask you. I said to Udada, what is your hope for South Africa? And the question I will ask you is, what is your hope for Africa? Nelson Mandela said, South Africans need a little bit of faith, eh? So I asked him, what is faith? He said, faith
is the ability to see the invisible, to believe in the impossible, and to trust in the unknown. See the invisible, believe in the impossible, and trust in the unknown. Africa, the people of faith. Thank you.
Vusi Thembekwayo.